All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for being here at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday night. I know that people's schedules are really busy. You guys have a lot going on. My name is Sasha Bullen, and I'm the mental health specialist here at Del Oro High School. Jen Dixon is here from Placer, and then we have our associates, Lily and Maddie, who are also here at Del Oro. We're really excited for you to be here because the information that's going to be shared tonight is extremely important. And unfortunately, fentanyl is an epidemic really that's impacting communities across the nation, including our own. And so we're really excited to have partnered with Lisa from the District Attorney's Office to share information about fentanyl and specifically how it impacts our local community. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lisa, but thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. My name is Lisa Botwinick. I'm one of the supervising deputy district attorneys at the Placer County District Attorney's Office. For those of you who don't know who the District Attorney's Office is, we're your prosecuting agency for Placer County. So we prosecute all the crimes that happen within our Placer County borders, from misdemeanor petty thefts, driving under the influence, assaults, all the way up to homicides. So all those cases are handled by our office. But specifically, we've seen an increase of fentanyl-related crimes in our county, from use, possession for sale, including selling to someone that then results in death. And at that point, we realized we needed to do more than just prosecute, and we needed to be part of the community. So we've worked with other groups and other agencies within the county to bring this message to all of our parents and families so that you have this information to share with your students and your young adults. So to start off, what is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a narcotic, a controlled substance. It's a drug. It's synthetic, which means it's fake. It's made in garages, laboratories. It's not organic, so to speak. So there's an endless supply. As long as someone's making it, there will always be fentanyl. Fentanyl is highly addictive, very cheap to make, but it's very fatal. So that's the danger that it's our students and our young adults, both in Placer County and nationwide. The most common form that we're seeing fentanyl in our community is in fake prescription pills. So to be clear, these are not real prescription pills that have fentanyl added to them. These pills are fake from the very beginning. They're completely counterfeit. They contain fillers and fentanyl. And because they're made in labs and garages, illicit labs and garages and basements, there's no recipe. Nobody's paying attention to how much fentanyl is in any one of these given pills, and thus the risk that any one of these pills can be fatal. The majority of the pills we're seeing on our streets are being made to look like oxycodone, Percocet, Xanax, and even Adderall. So what we see students and young adults looking to purchase what they think are legitimate prescription pills. But instead of getting a legitimate prescription pill, they're getting one of these fake pills that's containing fentanyl, and it's unfortunately taking their lives. This is an example of photos of a real oxycodone and fake oxycodone. I will tell you honestly, I can't tell the difference between the two. And our law enforcement can't tell the difference. The only way we know is when we send these pills to the Department of Justice laboratory to have them tested to tell what's actually in these pills. So it's important for our students and young adults to know that if we as adults, as professionals, there's no way that they can tell the difference on the street, whether these are real pills or these fake counterfeit pills.
What's a fentanyl? A fentanyl is a fake prescription pill that looks just like the real thing, except it contains fentanyl. Fentanyl is an extremely powerful opioid, which is mixed together with a bunch of other stuff, then pressed down into pills to look real. They can be disguised as almost anything, from Oxy to Percocet to Xanax or Vicodin. And the scary thing is, fentanyl shouldn't be anywhere near these pills. It's dangerous. We are talking about a drug that's 50 times stronger than heroin. And just a tiny amount, literally a couple grains of sand, can be the difference between taking a dud or taking something that'll straight up kill you. The worst part is, you can't even test a fentanyl. The only way to know if your drugs are legit is if they're prescribed by a doctor. If not, you're getting ripped off. That guy on Instagram or Snapchat who tells you they're legit, he's BSing you. He'll tell you they're real, even though they're not. There are literally hundreds of millions of these fentanyls out there, and they look just like the real thing. I mean, can you tell the difference between these two? What if I told you they're both fentanyls? How about these? Also fentanyls. Convincing, right?
Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise in fentanyl-related deaths, both nationwide and here in Placer County. In 2021, we lost 33 residents in Placer County alone to fentanyl-related deaths. It's getting to the point to where the increase in fentanyl-related deaths is up almost nearly 500% in the last couple years. So much so that fentanyl-related deaths are now the one leading cause of death for this age range. This graph shows some of our local Placer County numbers. The blue bar shows all of our overdose-related deaths in the county, whether it's alcohol or another controlled substance, including fentanyl, and the green bar is our fentanyl numbers. You can see just a couple years ago, we didn't have any fentanyl-related deaths. Last year, we had 33. We're already up to 20, and my numbers are probably because those are from a couple weeks ago. We're to the point now where 50% of our overdose and drug or fentanyl-related deaths, 50% of all the overdoses in our county are fentanyl. That's just an indication of how prolific fentanyl is and how it can be found anywhere in our county. And the numbers is to hear the real story. We lost a child due to fentanyl poisoning. We have two different families who are here tonight to talk to you about their experiences and what happened with their children to try and prevent this from happening to anyone else in the county. I'm going to start with Laura Didier and have her come up and talk about her son, Zach.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out. These assemblies are really important. I sure wish I had seen an assembly like this a couple years ago and known what was coming, but it was just starting to hit Placer when we lost Zach. So before I talk about Zach, I was going to mention Spencer on the end. Normally his mother, also Laura, is with us, but she's unavailable tonight. Spencer was 20. He was killed just a few months before we lost Zach. It was a counterfeit pill. Spencer was a bright young man. He was getting ready to start the fire academy. He was an EMT. He did struggle with some mental health issues around ADHD and some anxiety. And unfortunately, to self-medicate was something that ended up being counterfeit and killed him in even though his mom is not here tonight. So before I tell you what happened to my beautiful son, the one on the left and right here, I want to tell you a little bit about how he lived. So he was a senior at Whitney High School. He was only 17 years old. He loved school. He loved being a student. So he had maintained straight A's for his career and almost got a perfect score on the SATs just a few months before he was killed. He was also an athlete. He played soccer for a school. He was working toward his Eagle rank advancement in the Scouts, and his passion was music. He loved to play piano. He taught himself how to play piano, and he perfected several songs, his favorite being Christmas Time Is Here from the Charlie Brown Christmas special. He loved Snoopy from the time he could walk. He was always carrying a Snoopy or a Woodstock in his hand. He had starred in the school musical just a couple months before he had died. He played Troy Bolton. If you know the High School Musical shows, he played Troy. And he was amazing. And then COVID happened. And and everything was very locked down. He didn't get a track season his junior year, and he was starting his senior year, and it was still very, very locked down. But all things considered, he seemed to still be doing well. His grades were good. He had a wonderful relationship with his girlfriend, with his friends. There was no misuse of substances, happening. But over Christmas break of 2020, Zach decided to do some experimenting. He was looking for a Percocet pill. He connected with someone that was selling these counterfeit pills through Snapchat. We know that on December 27th, we only knew this after he passed away. And on the 24th, that pill must not have had much fentanyl in it, because no two counterfeit pills are alike. As Lisa mentioned, the way that they're manufactured, there's no weights and measurements, there's no margin for error with fentanyl. So on the 26th, he decided to try one more pill. And on the 27th, he never woke up. That's how fast this can happen to a family. There were no drugs in his room. Like I said, there was no history of misusing substances. But fortunately, Placer, seeing this alarming trend in 2020, they did treat Zach's room like a potential crime scene. Not finding any other drugs, it was a real mystery why he would be dead. So they had to, do an autopsy to rule out natural causes. But the coroner told us that day in the house, we think we're going to find fentanyl in his system. I was like, what's that? What is fentanyl? How would my kid get it? We live in a beautiful, wonderful area. I've never even heard of this. What are you talking about? And that's when Zach's dad and I did our research. How are kids getting hold of fentanyl? And when we got the confirmation of what happened, we wanted to tell everybody we knew what was going on, because Zach's friends were just as blindsided as we were by his death, unaware of this deception that was going on. So fortunately, we live in this great community of Placer, where all of these agencies have come together. And at Zach's high school last spring, they launched the One Pill Can Kill Placer campaign. And now we're able to get in front of students and parents. Right after Zach died, Zach's dad and I, we were just going to, where we could, a lot of virtual presentations, classrooms, with just a handful of students at a time. So I just am so grateful to the DA's office for spearheading this assembly campaign, where we can get in front of the students, we can share this information with them, let them know what's happening, because it used to be that you would get warning signs, right? We tell the kids, like, sometimes in adolescence, you experiment, you test boundaries, you try different things, and that didn't used to be deadly. Maybe if you did that and started recreating with things, that could lead to addiction, could lead to, habitual dependency. And maybe at the end of that long progression, you might eventually lose your life to a drug because your body has worn out from the use, or you accidentally take too much and die. But now you can barely experiment. And that can be it. Because fentanyl doesn't discriminate. Fentanyl doesn't know if you've been abusing drugs or if you're a high school senior living a great life. It was not even 3 days from when he first met this seller until my son was dead. And that's why we're all here, just to talk to you guys about what this landscape is. It's different. It's different than it ever used to be. And when we talk to the kids, and I love seeing all the young faces here too, you know, it's not fair. You have so much sympathy from us. We did not grow up in a world with this, with these dangers. Drug dealers are on social media. They are exploiting these platforms to connect with young people. They are marketing things deceptively as benign medications, or, you know, adulterating other substances, putting in vape cartridges. You'll hear more about the other ways that it's happening. It's just important that we all know what is going on so that we can take care of ourselves and take care of our kids and our communities. So again, I really appreciate you all being here. The video that you saw comes from a nonprofit that I work with called Song for Charlie. And we have resources and bracelets and things out at the tables. On your way out, please grab some stuff. There are great videos in there, short like that. There's a little bit longer one that's 4 minutes long. They're a great way to get these conversations going. A lot of parents ask, how do I start this conversation? How do I have this conversation? And we always say a couple of things. One, be as honest as you can be as accurate as you can be. The resources on Song for Charlie and the One Pill Can Kill Placer, very accurate information. Try to speak without judgment, just with love. And if you need to use these videos to get those conversations open, it's a really great way to do that. So again, thank you guys so much for being here.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to see a good showing. My name is Chris. I am Zach's dad, and if it's okay with everyone, I'm not a fan of talking behind a podium, so I'm just going to walk around. Kind of makes it easier for me. Before I forget, I wanted to extend a heartfelt thank you to the District Attorney's Office for helping open the doors for us to share our message. There are some great resources out there. Laura mentioned, I like to push the little resource cards. They are business cards. Take as many as you'd like and hand them out. There's some great and valuable information on the back. As you could tell, this is not an easy thing to do. It's very difficult. It's some of the most difficult things. If it really is the most difficult thing I've had to go through, or one of the most difficult things I've ever had to go through to talk about this. The only thing worse was preparing. And it's still important. As Laura mentioned, it is a non-judgmental. This drug does not discriminate. I call it a silent killer. It is something that is extremely dangerous. It's very difficult. So I'm just going to talk a couple of resources that we like to present. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, records and presents the different types of deaths in our country. So this one is what's called a growth slide, and it compares 2015 to 2020. And all that is you can see the age demographics on the bottom, and those white bars are fairly uniform. And there's a little 6X there with a dash line. It's just saying the average growth, 6 times more people die from 2020 than 2015, 6 times. That's actually really scary in my opinion. But why we're here and talking to you guys is this demographic. The younger age kids, 14-year-old, it overshadows all the age demographics. This is reported by the CDC. So let's think about that for a minute. When your child was in 8th grade and you knew they were coming and there was a student who died, no matter what reason, it's always painfully sad when a high school student dies. And you know that your child's going to Del Oro next year and a student died. And then every year it got worse, so that by the time they're a senior, 14 students died at Del Oro. Wouldn't you be alarmed? I guarantee you would be alarmed, and we should be alarmed. But that's what's happened in our country. And we have to do something about it. Zach was not looking for fentanyl, but fentanyl found Zach. So why is this happening? Why is that age demographic affected or impacted? We really don't know all of the answers. I believe there are several, but the two big ones that stick out in my mind are, the first one is a cell phone. I did not have a cell phone when I was in middle school or high school, but our young kids have. This helped them learn how to adapt and solve problems in life, figure out how to think, how to act, how to solve problems. It's helped them solve math homework problems, climb their social ladder of social acceptance with their peers. It's helped them learn play a musical instrument. So it has become a reliable and trusted resource. But the cartels know that, and they are flooding all of the social media apps like Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram by openly advertising. Here's some products I've got for sale. Zach Taylor was a good example of that. He just had a little video as his profile, and it showed a table and everything he had for sale, from alcohol, paraphernalia products, hard stuff, easy stuff, vapes, puff bars, all of it was there. It was wide open. It was accessible. The other thing is legitimate prescriptions. Pills are far more common today than they were when I was young. We live in a pill popping culture. There's a legitimate prescription for just about anything, for just about anybody. And a lot of young kids today have been prescribed by their doctor a legitimate prescription. And it can help them deal with anxiety for ADHD, or it's helped them manage pain for oral surgery if they're getting ready for braces. So they're used to seeing everyone has a prescription pill. Their friends, their cousins, their siblings. Pills are far more normalized today than they were back then. So can you imagine a young middle school or high school kid being approached by a stranger on social media at our mall? And this guy or gal says, hey, I've got everything here. Well, I don't really want cocaine. I think that's the heavy stuff. And I don't really care about vapes or whatever, but prescription pills, that may seem like a safe solution, right? Because prescriptions are common. Everyone has them. So when you combine legit prescriptions that gives the appearance of something safe and the accessibility through social media on their phone, make no mistake, the cell phone is a super highway for drug traffickers to make connections and do their business. It creates an someone with limited life experience. This is my other chart I like to talk about. This is what I like to call the drugs. This chart is 2015, and the age is sorted on the bottom, again, from age 1 to 80. And it's just like a splatter chart. And it shows all the different drugs that were involved based on an age group. You can see heroin, cocaine, benzos, meth, and fentanyl is highlighted in yellow. And there's all the different presents. So like someone who's 20 years old, over 40% of the deaths from 2015, 2020. Fentanyl's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in vapes. If you ever, the first recorded that the DA presented was in October of 2019 when they're investigating a vape-involved death, and the roommate who survived admitted that there was fentanyl in their vape tank. And you can Google and see examples, but outpacing all the other drugs. So with that said, in all our advocacy work, our biggest struggle is stigma. People who don't really have a direct experience with this, they just think, oh, fentanyl is another drug, it's another opioid. I feel bad, but they shouldn't be involved. Because sometimes stigma brings addiction into play. And if addiction gets associated with our story, our message gets lost. From what I've seen, I think there are two main parts. One is the lethality, and the other is deception behind the danger. So I brought a visual aid. This is a Splenda sugar packet. And this has 1 gram of artificial sweetener. According to the National Institute of Health, a little more than one of these packets to an average adult of cocaine could be lethal if they took it all at once. It's about 1.3 grams. That's not a lot of product. It's just a little more than one of these sugar packets because cocaine is pretty powerful. But if I emptied more than half of this, so there's a little less than half, that's how much heroin could be lethal to an average adult if they consumed it all at once. Heroin is far more powerful than cocaine. If I emptied the packet, touched the inside of the packet, and the remaining residue on it, as little as 4 or 5 milligrams, can kill you and me if we shared it. Fentanyl is that powerful. Cocaine, heroin, meth does not do that. Oxycodone, Oxycontin, Percocet, Xanax, Adderall would never even go close to doing that. But fentanyl does that. This little packet, if it was fentanyl, could kill up to 500 people, all of us in one room. It's that powerful. So if they're marketing it and there's deception behind it, this is a total game changer. As Laura mentioned, it is just like a minefield out there. You could tiptoe down that little unhealthy path of let's experience our boundaries. Do you guys remember the first time you drove a car by yourself when you were in high school? Remember how you felt? Did you not speed even a little bit? For you young drivers, when you're brand new here, did you not look at that incoming text just once? You're by yourself. It is human nature to explore our boundaries, our new boundaries. So when there's so many different products out there now, I get that. But what no one's explaining is that this is so much more dangerous. It's really poisonous. That's what's going on out there. And we need to be aware. CDC reported in 2021, fentanyl changes everything. Over 71,000 people lost their life from fentanyl in 1 year. For you, LA crash every day in our country for that year. It's actually been that rate for almost 2 years now. A fentanyl fatality happens every 7 minutes in our. What I need to make sure, my message to the parents who are here, first of all, thank you for being here. This is that important. Of all the parent info nights I've been to for all of our children, this is by far the most powerful I've ever experienced. But get smart, learn about this, and have a sit down with your kids and just say, look, I'm really scared. What's this all about? Are you seeing dealers on social media? Who are you texting on social media like Snapchat? Are you seeing one pill can kill campaigns? And if you are seeing that because Song for Charlie is very active on pushing awareness ads on Snapchat and TikTok. I've seen a bunch. Ask your children to share that. Talk to the parents of your children's friends. Talk to your teachers, your counselors, your coaches for your children, and just spread the word. And for the young people in this audience, guys, there is hope. You did not create this problem, but you certainly can solve it. Because all you need to do is get smart and just share this information. If you want to change the world, it starts right here. Education, as Malcolm X said, education is the passport to your future. And yes, one person can make a difference. A Washington, a Lincoln, a Nelson, a Malala, a King can make a big difference and change the world in a good way. So please share this information to help us turn our anguish into action and just be aware. So thank you again for being here, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I know it's hard for Chris and Laura to come up and share their grief, but I think it's so important for all of us to hear their story, to understand how this can happen. It did happen, and it does happen here in Placer County. Next, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Morgan Geyer. Morgan's the district attorney, so the district attorney for the Placer County District Attorney's Office, to speak a little bit about what we're doing on our side in terms of dealing with the fentanyl crisis that we're seeing in our county.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here again. My name is Morgan Geyer. I'm the district attorney for Placer County. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing sort of on the enforcement side and the prosecution side. But let me start by acknowledging the Didier family and Liz Dillinger, who's also here, who you will hear from. Their stories are inspiring and amazing and are the reason why we go from school to school to school to do all of this. And to see everyone here tonight is humbling and inspiring. So my message to the teenagers that are here, thank you for being here. Talk about this with your friends. Make sure they know what is going on. Because these dangers are real. We started, I'd been in office a few months when Zach passed away. And I thought of it as this could happen to anyone. And within a few weeks, I realized this is happening to anyone. It became to the point where our narcotics prosecutor in their office, when he would walk by me, would say, we had another one. He needed to say nothing else for me to understand what he meant. And that was another young adult had died from fentanyl poisoning. So we decided to take action. The way we will solve this is through education and awareness, and on the back end, through enforcement and prosecution. Our law enforcement community is a very tight community. They have prioritized the investigation of fentanyl, which we sadly see everywhere in all of our enforcement stops now. Whenever we seize narcotics, it's always fentanyl. There used to be maybe a little, and now it's primarily what we're seeing on the streets. We have several task forces that are designated and designed to disrupt and dismantle the organizations that are bringing this to our community, and they're having a lot of success, but we won't enforce or prosecute our way out of this problem. So some of the things we have done, we've tried some of this legislatively with no success yet, but we will still try. But one of the things we are doing is when people are held accountable and prosecuted for the sales of narcotics, any narcotics in Placer County and other counties across the state are doing it as well, we're providing an advisement to those who are selling. So if someone is arrested and prosecuted for selling narcotics, they're given an advisement. You'll see it up there. It says, selling narcotics, given the presence of fentanyl everywhere in our narcotics, selling drugs is dangerous to human life. And if you do it again and someone dies as a result, you may be charged with murder. And ultimately and legally, that helps us down the road if and when we are able to investigate and prosecute someone. We were able to do they were able to provide the investigators information. We were able to track down, arrest, prosecute, and sentence that seller to prison. They were conversations that no parent should have to have with cops or with prosecutors. Very difficult decisions and topics that we had to talk about. Since then, during the prosecution of the individual who killed Zach, we had others. And during that investigation, sadly, because there were more of them, we got better at it. And we were able to analyze our investigation and determine that under the law, when you know that what you're doing is dangerous and might kill someone and you do it anyway, you do it with what I call a deadly ambivalence. You don't care if your customer lives or dies. The law calls that murder. And we are one of about 3 counties now that have prosecuted. We now have our 4th. We are prosecuting people who have been arrested for selling fentanyl that has ultimately led to the death of others with murder. And I don't do that so that I can prosecute more murder cases. I don't want to do that. I pray for the day I got nothing to do at the office. We don't do that to prosecute more murderers. We do that to save lives. If a collateral message to those who wish to sell these deadly pills in our community is that if you do that, you might pay for it with your life by virtue of a murder sentence, and that keeps you out of our county, I'm okay with that message. We will be aggressive. We will use it when the facts support it, but that's what's out there. Those are some of the consequences, at least in our community, that dealers may face when they come in. We have already taken over the last year hundreds of thousands of these fentanyl pills that are either in or destined for Placer County. We sit at the top of the San Joaquin Valley, and that makes us a corridor for the sales and transportation of a lot of these. So we are aggressive in our efforts. We will continue to do so. But again, the solution to this problem is what's happening in this room, is the conversations that kids you will take to your friends, parents, you will have with other parents and your kids, those difficult conversations about sometimes kids just needing a little extra help or being a little pressured too much. I have 3 boys and we are overcommitted and overscheduled. I've got 1 in the pool here right now and a couple over on the baseball field, and my wife and I are dividing and conquering tonight. And we try and take a moment and check in and say, what's going on? Who are you talking to? What happened? And just one of the stories I love, we were coming back from a family wedding in Montana, and we're in the middle of the Nevada desert, and there's a billboard that says one pill can kill. And my oldest boy says, "Hey, that's what you're talking about all the time. One pill can kill." And I said, "Yep, that's exactly right." And he said, that's what Zach is all about right there. And I said, "All right, remember that and tell your friends, because that's what it's all about tonight, is conveying that message, because the only pills you can take are the ones you get from your pharmacy, from your doctor. Everything else you have to assume can be lethal." Thank you all so much for being here tonight. We really, really appreciate it.
These photos are from our local task force. So these are actual fentanyl pills that have been taken off of our local streets. And so as you can see, they're coming in large quantities. We're finding them in bagfuls, bucketfuls, trunkfuls. And now, unfortunately, we're also finding it in rainbow colors. So we're not quite sure how this is going to play out, but it's important for everyone to know that fentanyl is coming into our county in all shapes and sizes and colors. And our students. This graphic shows what I was talking about the small amount of fentanyl that can be lethal. It's only a couple grains of fentanyl can be enough to kill a person, take someone's life. It's easy for a pill to contain just that small amount of fentanyl to kill someone. I'd like to introduce Shelley Rogers from Granite Wellness, who's going to speak to us a little bit about some of the
Hi, everyone. So my primary role with Granite Wellness is prevention, so youth substance use prevention. And so this is one of the biggest ways that we can, the things that we can do to prevent is get the information out here. So my heart is just, it is so heavy when I think about this incredible loss that the families have had, but I'm so grateful that they're sharing their story, because this is the information we need, and they've said it, let's just share it far and wide. And it's one of our biggest prevention tools. But I wanted to talk a little bit about cannabis, marijuana, right? And you might be saying, well, why are we talking about around the issue of fentanyl? And the research and the studies are showing up in different substances. They literally are finding fentanyl laced in cannabis. So that's real. That's something that's happening. So it's just one more sub that, and a lot of times I think people think, there's a lot of normalization that has happened with the legalization of marijuana, and it can sometimes be seen as the least harmful. But unfortunately, it's unfair. It's unfair for the kids these days that really anything can be something that can poison them. Nobody is going to use marijuana and think that they're going to die from fentanyl poisoning, or want to die from fentanyl poisoning, but that's actually where we're at today. It's another risk. And the other thing that we wanted to share with you is, the research is happening, and more studies are showing the correlation between mental health and the use of cannabis, particularly with youth. When they're using, the young brain is still developing. And one of the main reasons for this is the marijuana today is not the same marijuana that was around in my generation. Or like another speaker, Ben Court, who talks about this across the country, super passionate. He says, today's weed is not grandpa's weed. It's a whole different thing. It's the potency, the THC content, up to 99% in some cases. And that is a game changer. And what they're finding, the studies are showing that there is a correlation to talk a little bit about that. There are some health folks, and I want to thank my partner in prevention from Placer County Public Health for putting this information together and this slide together. But public health folks in San Diego did some studies with coroner's data in San Diego. And being the #1 drug found among young people 25 and under. They also found that nearly 50% of those who had completed suicides had THC in their system. And 50% of those, THC was the only thing in their system. So it wasn't like they had been under the influence of a lot of things. THC was the only thing. The research is also showing that it increases the risks of depression, anxiety, psychosis. The #1 risk factor for opioid misuse disorder is having ever used marijuana. So really it's just, why we're talking about it is because it's another increased risk, and there are connections, there are correlations. So that's the only slide for me right now.
It's just sad to see that so many of our youth are turning to marijuana thinking it is a less harmful, less severe drug, but it actually is much stronger than it used to be and is actually leading to further drug use. And so it's quite scary. So thank you, Shelley, for sharing that. One of the other things we wanted to bring to everyone's attention, I think the Didier's mentioned this earlier, is that we are actually finding fentanyl in vape pens. One of the things that's a common thread with fentanyl is the deception, right? The deception behind what the dealer is selling and what the person thinks they're buying. It's happening with counterfeit pills, marijuana, and it's also happening with vape pens. Unfortunately, there's been several incidents throughout the country where fentanyl has been found in these vape pens, making them just as dangerous as any other substance that you can buy on the street. What we can do as a community is to focus on harm reduction. I'm going to invite Christian from Granite Wellness to come talk about some of the harm reduction strategies that we have available to us.
Thank you. Before I get started, I'd like to just take a moment of silence for the parents who have lost kids in this community. It's difficult. So, okay. Next, I would like to thank the District Attorney's Office and all of our partners who have given us this opportunity and platform to speak to you guys. My name's Christian. I am an adolescent drug and alcohol counselor. So what that basically means is when your child gets in trouble at school using, or goes to the juvenile hall, or ends up addicted to something, or early intervention, and you need support, I'm the person that spends time with your family, with your kids, educating and trying to work through everything that's going on. I work with about 200 kids a week, and when we talk about the amount of young people who we've lost in the last few years, I personally had relationships with 12 to 14 of those young people. So this is something that I'm experiencing every day. I'm in the trenches, working in the community, trying to make a difference with all the young people, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I've seen this building up and kind of happening for the last few years. And sometimes it's really unfortunate the way that things work out. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a loss for a family before we're able to get the eyes on this situation. That being said, there are things that we can do to try to make a difference. Harm reduction. Harm reduction is real basic. It's anything that we can do to reduce harm, right? So there are things that we can do to support each other, to support our families, our schools, our children. Real quick, if you are a parent, would you raise your hand for me? Yeah. We're not supposed to bury our children. I'm a father of 4. It is my greatest achievement in life is having the opportunity to raise young people, and we're not supposed to bury our children. This is very, very difficult. But like I said, there are things that we can do. First of all, with harm reduction, we've got a few things that we can kind of do to make a little bit of a difference, right? We've talked about how a very small amount of fentanyl can be fatal. So there are a few different things that I would like to touch on, but first and foremost, the most important thing is just having conversations with our children. Our children are experiencing all of the things that we're experiencing. They've gone through COVID. They've gone through isolation. They've had to stay away from friends and schools and all of those things. Out of all the kids that I work with, I would say 90% of them have developed some sort of social anxiety or depression through this process. If you've dealt with depression or anxiety, you know how difficult and debilitating that can be. Imagine if you're 14, 15 years old. So what can we do? One of the things that we want to touch on is Narcan, and one of the things that I would like to touch on is fentanyl test strips. At the very beginning, we had a quick little snippet where a guy said, there's no way that we can test for fentanyl. That's not entirely true. There are certain things that we can do, but they're not flawless. They don't work. We've got multiple different types of people struggling in our community. We have young people who have never used drugs, like Zach, who are just experimenting and they're trying to find ways to experiment as safely as possible. And then we have people who begin to use substances and develop a tolerance for that substance and then become addicted to that substance. So I want to touch on both of those categories. First of all, when it comes to fentanyl test strips, it's not, like I said, it's not 100%, right? There are ways that we can test drugs for fentanyl, but it's not a perfect science, right? The reason I mention it is because I don't want any of you to go home, have a conversation with your children, and your children say, it's safe if I test my drugs with fentanyl test strips. That's not how it works. I bring it up because it's important for us all to be educated, but it's also important when we have these conversations with young people that we're able to let them know what the options are. But the most important is just having conversations. There are taboo subjects that we don't like to talk about, right? Nobody wants to talk about depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, addiction. Those are all yucky topics that aren't, happy-go-lucky. They're not things that we, want to talk about with our children, but this is very, very, very real. With fentanyl test strips, we can crush up a pill, we can add water to it, and we can use what basically is if we were going to test you for fentanyl in your system, right? You would pee in a cup, we would use a dip. You can do that, and that'll at least give you some sort of an idea. Not a perfect science, but like I mentioned, the 12, 14 kids that I've known that have died, there's been 70, 80, 100 kids that are alive today because of some of these harm reduction techniques. Let's go to the next slide and let's talk about the chocolate chip cookie effect. When we bake cookies, right, and we pull that cookie off the cookie sheet and we take a bite, the first bite could have 4 or 5 chocolate chips in it, right? The second bite could have absolutely none. What we're talking about when we're talking about fentanyls, it's not like it's a pharmaceutical grade. This is someone who is in their garage or bathroom mixing up a batch of this highly addictive, highly dangerous substance, right? So when one fentanyl compared to a second fentanyl, there could be a whole lot more fentanyl in one than the other. It's not a perfect science. So again, fentanyl test strips, they don't work completely. That being said, I want to talk about it a little bit. Next, we would like to touch on Narcan. Narcan Okay. We're gonna switch it up. No, I'm just playing. All right. We're gonna watch a video. Thank you. That was exciting. So Narcan or Naloxone. Um, Narcan is an opioid overdose reversal medication. And there's a few things that we need to know about it. First of all, if you come across someone that you are concerned has overdosed or has an opioid like fentanyl in their system, the very first thing that we do is call 911, right? Hands down, because even if this works, we still need our children or whoever it is to see, go to the hospital, get checked out, make sure everything's okay. This isn't going to work every single time necessarily, right? Because of the different amounts of fentanyl in some of these pills, it could take one of these or it could take two of these, depends on how much you have in your system. So these boxes, which we have some, and at the end of this, we'll give them out to you guys if you'd like. They come with two of them in a pack. Real simple. This is a nasal spray. You remove it from the package, you pull the cap off of it, you stick your fingers on it like that, you put it in one nostril, and you push the plunger in. Now, there is a little bit of a difference in how long we should wait between Narcans, right? I personally Narcaned someone on the side of the road a couple of months ago. And with that person, I waited about 15 seconds to see if there was any kind of response. When there wasn't, I pulled out the second one, stuck it in the opposite nostril, and pushed the plunger in. And luckily, that brought them out of it. When they get brought out of an overdose reversal, it basically binds with the opioids and it pushes it and flushes it out of your system immediately, right? So a lot of times when someone wakes up, they're immediately going through withdrawal. So it's really important that we get them to the emergency room, that we get them checked out. A message to all the parents out there. Knowledge is power. A few years ago, I saw this kind of happening in other communities, and it was very difficult to get the word out to everybody. I am so grateful for this opportunity. I mentioned it earlier to some of my colleagues. I feel like I'm part of the Avengers at this point, right? Because we each have different hats that we wear. We each have our own quote unquote superpowers. But one of the biggest pieces of that team is you. You can be part of this Avengers team as well by communicating with your children, by having conversations, by not judging or stigmatizing, and reaching out if you need support. If you have a hard time talking with your children, I would be more than happy to help. I would be more than happy to have a conversation with you or with your children to support you guys. I much rather have a conversation with someone that's alive than have to have a conversation why someone passed away. Please help support us to not allow any more of these statistics to happen. Do not let this go without doing your part, being a part of this team to support this community, these young people. At the end, we're going to talk about resources. And if any of you guys have questions, concerns, or you need support, I'm going to set up outside and I would love to talk to all of you. I can give you guys Narcan. It's a super easy training that we can do. There's a video we're going to watch. But please feel free to ask questions, get resources, get support. And again, I appreciate you guys' time.
Naloxone is now available in most places without a prescription. Naloxone is a temporary antidote for opioid drugs, which include but are not limited to heroin, fentanyl, morphine, codeine, oxycodone, and hydromorphone. You should give naloxone if you suspect someone has overdosed on an opioid. Suspect an overdose when someone isn't responsive and they have at least one of the following signs: not breathing, slow and soft breathing, making snoring or gurgling sounds. Their body is limp, cold and clammy skin, bluish lips and nails, pinpoint pupils. If you think that someone has overdosed, stay calm and call 911. Each dose of naloxone can only stop the overdose for about 30 minutes. To give naloxone using a needle, uncap the vial, insert the needle, and slowly draw the naloxone into the syringe. Inject the naloxone into a muscle in the person's arm or leg. It isn't necessary to remove their pants or shirt. To administer naloxone nasal spray, place the tip in either nostril and press firmly up on the plunger. If the person is breathing, put them on their side to protect them from suffocating or choking. If they aren't breathing, perform rescue breathing if you know how, until the paramedic arrives. And finally, while waiting for the ambulance, remember, stay on the line with 911. Don't try to get the person up because they could fall. Don't put them in a bathtub or shower because they could slip, drown, or go into shock. And don't give stimulants like crystal meth or caffeine because it can make them sicker.
So as Spencer, unfortunately, Spencer's mom, Laura, couldn't be here, but luckily Laura shared Spencer's story. And next I want to introduce Liz Dillinger. She lost her son, Cade, also to a fentanyl poisoning here in Placer County. And so Liz is going to share her and Cade's story, not about just what happened to Cade, but also what Cade left behind.
Normally my son's picture's up here, but it's actually probably easier that it's not. I'm Liz. I'm a mom. I lost Cade 10 months ago. I always tell myself I'm going to come up here prepared to be able to talk to you guys. We grew up in Placer County. I went to high school here in Roseville. Cade grew up in the Rockland community, played Tri-City. Super awesome, passionate kiddo. Never did I think I would be sitting here trying to describe my son to a group of people. He would be mortified if he knew I was doing this. Probably proud, but mortified. Cade was on his way to his cousin Logan Webb's wedding, and he went to go get a haircut, and we didn't hear from him. I had Cade on locate on my phone. I have all 4 of my kids on locate on our iPhones. And unfortunately, I was in Texas and I kept locating my son, and he was in the same spot for a prolonged period of time at Safeway in Roseville. And I called his dad and said, something's not right. I knew because I felt my son leave me that afternoon. It came to me that in one moment I felt like he was 1,000 years away from me, and I couldn't understand why I felt that way. I knew later that night when you get the phone call that no parent wants to get, that my son was gone. And that video of what the human body goes through during cardiac arrest and fentanyl, every one of those stages, I have to realize that my son went through, but there was nobody there to give him Narcan or save him. The night that I got the phone call, I tried calling his girlfriend over and over. And the next morning she texted me and said, "What's up?" And I had to tell her that Cade was gone. She was 9 months pregnant. My son passed away 4 weeks before his baby was born. I moved back from Texas after my 18-year-old daughter graduated high school in May. I moved back to California. to take care of my granddaughter, who is 9 months old now. I also have Cade's dog. A few weeks ago, we did a high school assembly at West Park, and Lisa said to me, I was loading my car, "Thank you for what you're doing. This must be so hard and triggering." And I thought about it for a second. And what's triggering is that I have my granddaughter from my son in my home every morning, and I listen to her laugh, and I see her face, and I remember how my son's not there to see those moments. Or when I take his dog out and throw the ball for her, I'm going to be sad for the rest of my life, and I can sit on my couch and I can cry every day like I do, or I can stand in front of your high school students at assemblies that we've done since the beginning of the school year. We've reached 18,000 of your children and talk to them about something that's taking their lives. When we talk about how hard this is, there's really no explanation to describe being able to stand here and try to explain to you how amazing my child was. But I want to give you some tools, because as you're sitting here, you're probably wondering, what can we do with our kids? What do I say to my child? How do I start this conversation? So I have a 15-year-old who goes to school in Rockland. My 15-year-old told me a few weeks ago that his friends have the dealer smoke the vape or take a pill in front of them. And that way they know it's okay. And if he didn't die, then they're not going to die. This is 3-week-old information. This is a 15-year-old and a sophomore in high school in our county. I want you to understand that these kids believe they're invincible, as we do. It's our human innate nature to not every day think that we're going to die. If that was the case, none of us would leave our house. We're given this ability to feel that every day that would never happen to us, and our teenagers have that times 1,000. I attended an opioid summit yesterday at Sac State, and I learned some really helpful facts, and I'm going to try to remember it all to give you, and if not, I have a list of things I can talk to you afterwards. But one of them is an app called Bark that I learned about yesterday. And this app you can have on your phone for your child, and it can actually pick up emojis and certain words and sentencing. If they're engaging in any type of a transaction, the app can notify you if those words or emojis are being used. There's a lot of emojis out there right now that represent different types of things, like a bus would be Xanax, or an outlet plug on your phone is plug, which means drug. They said that right now it takes a teenager 1 click to be able to have access to drugs on their phone. It takes 5 clicks to get out of that app, whatever social media app that they're in. And then once the drug dealer has their information, they message them, they check in on them, they say, hey, we got this menu today, or we got a special, or we got a sale, like a clothing sale. They're targeting our children. It's why they make drugs in rainbow colors. The cartel's smart. They know that we're talking to you guys. They know that we're aware of counterfeit pills. They know that we're having assemblies and we're sitting here in parent information nights. So what are they doing now? They're putting it in candy. They're putting it and making it look like candy. Not only are they putting it in candy, but they're actually making fake sweet tarts, fake Skittles. They're packaging it in packages, because whatever they can do to addict your children, then they've created customers. And if a couple of die along the way, it's no significance to them. I went to go visit my son. He's buried in the Newcastle Cemetery. I have to drive past that on I-80 every day on my way home to Auburn. And every day I feel guilty if I'm not going that direction to see him, so I go as much as I can. But I have the baby and my own 15-year-old and other children, and so there's some days I don't make it. But on Sunday, I went to see him, and there was another young man sitting right next to my son's grave. He had a drink with them, and he was hanging out, and I could tell he was on the other gentleman's grave, whose name's Dylan. He's also died at the age of 20. And I said, hi. And he's like, hi. Oh, you're sitting on my friend's grave, Cade. And I said, oh, you knew Cade? And he goes, yeah, I knew Cade, and I knew Dylan, and I knew Ian. They were all my friends. And all three of those boys are buried next to each other. And I said, well, I'm Cade's mom. He said, I'm so sorry. He said, I've lost 4 of my friends in the last year, and for 6 months, I haven't done a drug, and I've been sober. And I hugged him, and I told him about Granite Wellness Center, and I told him about addiction, and I sat on top of my son as I encouraged another young man who's been sober for 6 months that stopped doing drugs because he's losing so many of his friends. This isn't just hitting people in the community that are on the middle of the streets and doing drugs. This is hitting young adults and teenagers, like the 4th grader that died in San Antonio, Texas a few weeks ago because she thought she ate a sweet tart. Our children are in a new landscape now. Like they were saying earlier, this isn't the 1980s anymore where there's experimentation. You guys can't experiment. One mistake could be fatal. It wasn't like that for us. Now it's zero drugs, zero choice, zero tolerance, because it could take your life in an instant. It's important to understand that when you have these conversations with your kids, we know it's hard. I know it's hard. I have to have it with my 15-year-old all the time. And I can tell you, I started it by saying, hey, my assembly is coming to your school. Do you want to be there that day? Because your brother is going to be on the projector screen. He said, no, thank you. And then about a week before the assembly, he said, they played a video in our classroom about the one pill can kill. Did you make that video, Mom? I said, no, but I think the high school drama team put this video together, but it opened up the conversation because my son doesn't want to talk about one of the worst days, if not the worst day of his life, losing his brother. But it gives me the opportunity to say, hey, you had an assembly at your school. Do you know people that vape or do drugs or take pills? What about the kid that OD'd in the bathroom 2 weeks ago? Do you take vape pens when you're at the football game? Do you see other kids do it? I ask questions. It drives him crazy. He doesn't want to talk about it. But it's an opener to be able to have that conversation. When we talk about talking with your kids, you have to find those little ways. You can't just say, how is your day? Because they're going to say fine, and then that's all you get. I know, because I have 3 boys and a girl. So use our assemblies as an opener to be able to talk to your kids. Use tonight as like, hey, I went to this parent information thing, and there's a bunch of kids in our county that have been poisoned by fentanyl. Do you know people that have you seen that on your social media? Have you ever seen ads on Snapchat or TikTok? Ask those questions, because it gives you the opportunity to have that conversation. And if you see something that makes you question, yeah, I smoke vape pens, or yeah, I smoke weed, but it's just weed, drug test them. CVS has drug tests. I'll tell you, it works wonders when your kid says no, and then, oh, sorry, kids, the ones that are in here, but hey, pee in this cup. Oh, you know what? It might come back positive for THC, just letting you know. So there is ways to have this conversation, as hard as they are, but guess what? You still get to hug your kids tonight. They're still sitting with you. They're still home. You can still give them dinner and put them to bed. So those hard conversations are well worth it. You don't want to be me. You don't want to be standing up here. I can't have that conversation anymore, like they were saying. So as hard as it is, you just do it, because it's much worth having your child with you and then wishing that you would have done something different. And by the way, don't blame yourselves. You can't be held responsible for everything. You have those conversations, but just know that there's a war out there and your children are in it, and we have to give them the tools to be able to fight. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Liz. I'm going to reinvite Shelley to come back up from Granite Wellness to talk a little bit more about some of the things we can do to try and prevent our children from looking for other ways to self-medicate.
emotional. Yeah. So yeah, it's as heavy as this is. We want to talk a little bit about, we want everybody to go home with a little bit of hope. I think the hope is that now you have a lot more information than you had before you came here tonight. So it's like we're arming ourselves with information. We're armoring up with information. And so I'm just going to briefly tell you about a few additional resources. Some of them are out on the tables out there, so please stop by the tables. This is an example of a resource and information on the onepillcankillplacer.com website. And it's really just talking about different ways to reduce stress. Yeah, all of these things are probably not new to us, but they are ways that we can reduce stress. And another resource that these posters are out on the table. And I want to again thank my partner from Placer County Public Health for this resource. It's talking about lifestyle factors like nutrition, the benefits of being outside and in the sun, exercise and breathing, food and drink, and in the middle, it's pointing to sleep. So much research is talking about the importance of that for our young people too. This is new. This is stuff we all know. But one of the things that was a seed that was planted that here we are coming out of this period of the pandemic, and that we can think about it as a pandemic reset. So just kind of revisiting those things that we know are tools to stay healthy and well and focused on our health, and modeling that with our kids, with our whole family. And lastly, these websites are where you can go online and see some of the resources that we have on the tables back there. The One Pill Can't Kill Placer, Granite Wellness Centers, and raisingplacer.org is our prevention website. So I invite you to visit those for more resources. Thank you.
Unfortunately, one of the things we're seeing a lot of our students or youth who are struggling with stress, anxiety, pain management. And instead of turning toward their parent, their doctor, or a trusted adult, they're turning to the internet and to social media, and they're getting these fake counterfeit pills instead of real legitimate prescriptions. And so that's why the underlying message of addressing our mental health status with our children and with our families is so important, so that we're trying to target some of those issues before our children are looking for help on social media. The most important thing we want to leave you with tonight is that if a pill is bought outside of your pharmacy or your doctor, you have to assume that that pill is fake. And if it's a fake pill, you have to assume that it contains fentanyl and can kill you. It's the only way we can protect ourselves, our children, our students, is for everyone to have that basic understanding of the danger that we face in our community with these fake prescription pills. This slide shows all the different organizations within Placer County that have come together to unite to try and bring this message to our community so that everybody is armed with the information to make the best decisions for them. Everyone again for having us here. We have a couple minutes left. If anyone has any questions, we're open to answering questions. We also have resource tables in the lobby where you can pick up information or ask questions privately there as well. But before we conclude, are there any questions that anyone wants to ask? Yeah. I'll ask Christian, how many milligrams is one nasal spray of Narcan? I think he's going to pull out the box to find out. 4 milligrams. So each nasal spray contains 4 milligrams of Narcan. One of the things that I thought was fascinating when I was learning about Narcan is that it's not dangerous to give it to someone who's not suffering an overdose. So me currently not suffering an overdose, you could give me Narcan and it would not have any negative effects. So if you think someone's suffering from an overdose, but you're not quite sure, it's safe to administer Narcan. Even if you're not sure, it's better safe than sorry. And yes.
Typical dealer interaction that those students have? I mean, obviously they have to pick it up somehow. Is it a peer that they're picking it up from, or an older adult? Is it?
The question is, what is the general profile of one of our drug dealers who are selling these fake pills? Unfortunately, we see the gambit, but we do see a lot of peer-to-peer sales. A lot of our young people that we've lost actually bought their fake prescription pill from someone they thought was a friend. So a classmate or a former classmate. So someone who's close in age with them. So it's not necessarily the creepy 40-year-old who's selling pills to our 16-year-olds. Sometimes it's a 20-year-old, 22-year-old who is selling to our youth, who is in the same age demographic, which I think is giving a lot of false sense of security. But we also have Zach's case where Zach was approached by a dealer on Snapchat, which was an unknown person to Zach prior to that interaction on social media, which led to a meetup in person. Liz, and then
Like in our case, with my son, it was a friend that he had known for a while, also only 20. And actually, he's one of the cases that our district attorney was talking about that's currently in Placer County on murder charges. So, but yes, another young adult. And another example was just a couple of kids, 15-year-olds, went on Snapchat with someone they knew and had a car deliver drugs to the public pool in Lincoln. So they will deliver drugs anywhere. They'll drop it at your mailbox underneath a rock, and your kid will say, "I'm going to go get the mail," and it's there waiting. They'll bring it to the mall, to their school, to Dutch Bros, wherever you order that, they drop it off like a delivery service. So that's helpful.
I think, Chris, did you have something to add?
That's a really good question. How does that originate? How does that connection originate about connecting a dealer to a consumer? And as already mentioned, word of mouth is a very common thing. Either, hey, I need something for this. I want a high. I want to deal with pain. I want to deal with anxiety. A story of a young running back got injured at football on a Tuesday. Pretty bad. Coach says, I think you're going to sit out on a Friday night game. And he's thinking, I don't want to miss this game, but maybe I can get my own Percocet. Hey, guys, who do you know who can give me a Percocet? And they may say, here is someone on Snapchat. So it's word of mouth. The other way is they get solicited on Snapchat. Snapchat has a map feature on their phone. You can zoom in and you can see all the other Snap users on that. And then, so for example, if you go to the mall, you can zoom in and see all the Snap users. You can look at their Snap score and can see their profile and say, hey, that looks like a legitimate high school kid. As opposed to me, it'd be like, well, that's a dad. I don't Snap as much. But a high school kid, I could never compare with all, texting as much as a kid. Dealers will see that and they'll solicit. They'll go, hey, I'm at the mall, I'm at the food court also, and I've got a grocery store and I can deliver it. Sadly, they could deliver it in a minute, and sadly, they can kill them in a minute. So it's that bad. So
I think this other hand, yes.
How many high schools have you given the presentations to in Placer County, and how can we get it in this high school right now?
Absolutely. The question is, how many of high school assemblies have we done? We've done high school assemblies to students at every single high school in the Roseville Joint Union High School District. We've also been to Lincoln High School, and we've also been at Whitney High School. We do have school assemblies signed up for Rockland High School tomorrow. We've done parent information nights for Rockland, Roseville Joint Union, your district here, Eureka Union, and we're doing Lincoln's in 12 Bridges next week. I'm in communication with your administration here at your school here at Del Oro and the other schools in your district to see if this is something that they want to bring to campuses here. I think you can always email or send a message to your administration at whatever your local high school is and say, we as a parent would support this at our school.
Our goal is for every high school to feel like they're left out if they haven't had it. It's getting to the point now where we're getting calls to bring it to. So by the end of the year, we should try to work our way up to the top.
And it is something we're working on bringing to our schools throughout our district.
So something, in case you didn't hear, it is something the district office is looking into. And that was part of the reason to have the parent information night, was for the staff and administration to learn more about what our message was so that they can gauge whether or not it's appropriate for your students. So that's part of the vetting out process. I was talking to the administration earlier beforehand, and we're coming up on the holidays. It's going to be Thanksgiving break, finals, and Christmas before we know it. So we may not be able to schedule before the end of this semester, but if we can't get in before the end of this semester, we'll be back in the spring and available to schedule after the holidays. I just know it's getting into a tough spot. I've got high school kids, so I know it's going to get rough these next couple of months. Yes. I think the main message we're seeing here in Placer County is you need to take the same precautions on Halloween and with candy that we have for decades, right? As a parent, I have never let my children eat their Halloween candy before I've inspected the packaging. Never. And not just because it's the concern about fentanyl this year. I haven't done it for the last 17 years that my kids have been trick-or-treating. So it's just a caution there. But at the same time, not many people are going to give fentanyl away for free. It's a moneymaker. So we would most likely expect it to be sold, maybe cheaply, to those who are going to then buy it again. So I don't necessarily think the 5-year-old is at risk for a drug dealer trying to give fentanyl in a form to a 5-year-old. But a risk is if fentanyl is being formulated to look like candy, a child could find something lost or left or dropped at a park, think it's candy, not knowing any better because they're a young child, and eating what they think is candy. And that's where some of that risk is with these bright colored pills, is for the young ones who don't know what it is. Yeah, go ahead, Morgan.
One of the big dangers too with the colorization of it is it sort of normalizes it to that younger, especially what Chris was showing, that 14 to 15. You know, a blue pharmacy pill may look like something that's scary. A pink or purple one seems less dangerous, just intuitively. If it looks like a Fruit Loop, it's probably not going to kill you, kind of thing. And I think that's where our cartels, who are primarily in the distribution of this, are aiming, is to make it seem less lethal, just looking at it, that might be something that might be more attractive. I think that's what our concern is. I don't think our concern is that they're going to hide it in Skittles and give it to people just to try and kill them or addict them. But what we're going to see is it targeting a younger demographic because it just seems like something that is less lethal and something that seems like it's more okay to take, which is why it's so scary.
Kind of what we were seeing with vape flavoring, right? Cotton candy vape flavoring, that's not dangerous, right? It's cotton candy flavored. It's got to be okay for young kids. It's that marketing and the making things seem like it's safer. Yeah. Between, how much does a pill sell for is the question. They can range between $20 and $40 a pill. So it's very cheap, and they're making a big profit off of that. So it's very cheap to make and it's cheap to sell. No, the whole point. So the question is, what's the end game for the dealers? What are they trying to get out of this? And that's a big question we get, is why would a dealer want to kill their customer? Right? It doesn't seem like a good business model. It's not a good business model, but that's not their point. The point of a dealer is to make money. And so they're going to sell fake pills because people are asking for it. So as long as there's the demand, they're going to supply it. And so as long as we have consumers who are going to buy these pills, they're going to continue to sell them. The hope on the dealer's part is that there's enough fentanyl in it to get someone addicted, but not enough to kill them. But you can see by the quantities needed, that's a really fine line. So the hope is that a person takes 1 or 2 pills, gets addicted, And now you've got a customer or client who's calling you again for more. But because it's only such a small quantity that can be fatal, they run the risk of killing that customer or client. But unfortunately, there's a long line of people waiting to buy. And for them, it's just the cost of doing business. And that's why it's so dangerous, is because they don't care about their customers or their clients, right? They're not concerned about that person, and they're going to sell them whatever they have, regardless of what's in it.
The goal is to predict and keep that client base, but deadliness is a byproduct. They're like a short-term client list.
It can be. It's that's why I say it's not a good business model. For those of us who run businesses, that's not the way you'd want to do it. But unfortunately, there are so many people who are out there who are willing to buy it that it doesn't matter to them.
So you could hold back heroin, put a little bit of fentanyl in there, and get more bang for your buck. And then in this market, for all of the reasons we talked about tonight, of these fake pills that basically give you that opioid high, much cheaper and much more effective in pill form. So people want that, and if they get that high from it, they'll keep coming back for it. The problem is the way they're making it now, these Chinese street labs, that is a big byproduct that happens more and more now.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Christian.
The other thing that I experienced is music, right? A lot of artists rap about person, rap about bandwagon, right? Rap about addicts, right? So when a child is listening to music and they're hearing those things, the cartels, the drug dealers, whoever, are marketing towards all of those, that demographic. So if Future's rapping about perk 30s, then let's create as many perk 30s as we can and put them out there so the kids can be like their favorite artists, right? Which is unfortunate, but that's what they're doing. The end game is to get as many people addicted to these substances as possible. If you add a small amount of fentanyl to a vape cartridge, it isn't that they're thinking that taking a hit of that vape cartridge is going to kill them. They're hoping taking that hit is going to give them this euphoric feeling, and it's going to make them addicted. They're trying to create super drugs to get more people addicted and to be able to deliver it to your doorstep just like DoorDash.
I like the super drug. That's a good way of describing it. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
Maybe a little insight, but do you see this changing education law, like in our ed code law, as far as school discipline related to selling vapes or selling hits of vapes because of this piece? Because right now it doesn't fall in ed code in the way we would want it to fall. So
Interesting. As not an education lawyer, that's not our specialty. But I know lots of different groups are bringing forward different legislation to try and modify our existing laws to accommodate and recognize the danger that fentanyl is presenting in our community. So that might, I don't know if Morgan has anything on that, but.
That's an interesting point. We tried to attack it on the health and safety code and the penal code, and I don't want to get political, but in the state of California, we're not strengthening. I mean, our penalties for fentanyl are the same as any other drug despite its lethality. Right. There's probably more space to be able to improve tightening things on the education code level, where we're not worried about prison overcrowding and all of those other political issues that come into this discussion when you necessarily talk about how to put more teeth into the law. So that's, I'd actually like to pick your brain offline on that, because we've got a statewide leg meeting coming up, and that's something I would want to pursue.
Because I think you're right. It's something that we have to attack from every angle we can. And whether it's the ed code, the health and safety code, awareness, enforcement, we've got to try and deal with it.
So I'm hearing that the cartel is the primary maker of this, but in the same breath, we're also hearing that this is being made like local garages or by state scientists locally. So my question is, how often are we tracing these pills back to local people versus the cartel?
Most of the pills we're finding here are being traced back to the cartel. They're being sold here, but not necessarily manufactured here. But they are being manufactured in illicit labs, basements, garages in Mexico or in China. So they're still being made in these unsanitary, not licensed laboratories, which is why they're not consistent or pharmaceutical grade. But we're not seeing a lot of those labs here. They're coming into our county already in their final product in pill shape and form. But that's something that our task force do, is they try to backtrack to find out where it's coming from. And that's what you see nationwide with like the DEA trying to figure out where it's coming from. And that's how we know the majority of our finished products coming from the cartels through Mexico. Mhm.
We're better at catching them making it than we are catching them transporting it and smuggling it through. So it's so cheap to bring in that's easier and less risky than trying to make it here. Some do, but what you need to do it makes you much more detectable than if you just buy it in the street.
Yes.
I was just gonna say about your music comment. We're in the music industry. My husband's actually a famous artist, and he works very hard for lyrics, what he writes, right? So sometimes when the kids have grown up and they might hear a rap song, and I'm like, Dad, check it out, right? Check it out, and it's like, I don't want to say the words, right? But he goes, have you ever listened to the words? I mean, if you ever listen to the words, but it's a good beat, yeah, right?
Mhm.
But we have, I think, he's worked for 37 years in writing good music and being the musician that he is, but each generation, the Aerosmith and Def Leppard, there's not any much of them coming in our future. It's a lot of that, rap, so we try to really focus on, listen to the words, never mind the beat.
Right. Mhm.
Because then, Aftershock was just this last weekend, and people are doing mosh pits, and they're fucking crazy, and they're just like doing it, and it's like, it's not so much a bad thing, I guess, but it's music, I think, is really a big part of what your kids listen to.
And I think all of us can say that there were songs we grew up listening to that we didn't think about. And then when we heard it with our kids in the car, we're like, what was that song about? I can't believe I was singing that song when I was 10. But you hear things differently as an adolescent than you do as an adult.
This community, which I'm a part of Congress, and a lot of organizations that are ingrained in our community, teaching hip hop in certain situations, right? And we're all super making this point that we have to know what our children are ingesting, whether it's in their ears or through a substance, right? So just like all music has their little niche and little things that make it difficult. It's something that we're experiencing in hip hop a lot more than other genres, but it's something that as a community of hip hop artists, we're trying to make sure that parents are on the same page with us. So.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And maybe unfortunately for families that lost their children, I'm sure they probably listen to some songs that are very emotional and sensitive or remind you of your kids. Like, I think, just music is really a key thing.
Music's powerful. Thank you so much to everyone to come. I know we've run just a little bit over time, but I thank everyone for attending. We'll be around afterwards for a little bit if anyone has any follow-up questions, or you can also stop by one of the tables out in the lobby and we'll be there as well. Thank you.